Zabunga 360 inMotion Restream Advisory. We are excited of sharing to our audience the restream of the joint and collaborative project by the Red Monkey Talks and the Zabunga 360 inMotion channels. The following video is the first in-focus main feature of Red Monkey Talks show dealing with the Penafrancia Fluvial Colgante bridge disaster of September 16, 1972, and related trivia. It is our objective to expand the narrative, finally fill missing details, and shed the light and information for many who were not around yet when the unfortunate event occurred. Please stand by for the real Red Monkey Talks show. Thanks for checking us out. We start a 15-minute countdown and give a chance to our viewers to catch up on our show when we go live. Otherwise, we immediately jump right into the program. On this pre-programmed content, we show either one or a combination of sweeping review throwback of past posts, a teaser of upcoming content or additional supporting content of significant relevance to the main news, information or topic that will be in focus. The Red Monkey Talks show presents a variety of topics which include issues and events, some seldom highlighted or shoved under the rug. The worst yet is when it is presented in a different narrative and context. When necessary or applicable, we also add, upfront, our personal opinion, observation and experience on in-focus topic. We also feature flashback and throwback of past events of historical value worthy of discussion or remembering again. Imagine, if we can freely check out the pun and pinch in news, information, and culture you need to know. Join us here at the Red Monkey Talks show, and be a rebel, simply by listening, watching, and supporting us. Subscribe to our channel, like our content, leave a comment, and ring the notification bell to get timely updates. If you have just tuned in, you are just right in time. We are starting the discussion proper of our feature story or stories, because there are. Stay right there and get ready.
Long way process. It's really the life of the church na more and more a seat of the church. So thank you very much, Father Joey Gonzaga, ang rector na ng tawag nito, commission ng synodality ng Cáceres, and of course
may bahagi na po ng Elias Angeles Street, malapit na Cathedral Avenue. Medyo natagalan daw po ang image ng ating mahal na ina doon sa Maynaga College. And kauusap
placed on an ass and was carried on the shoulders of the priest.
Viva ang banal na lawag ni Jesus! Viva ang satuyang paratubos! Divino Rostro! Viva el Divino Rostro! Let us now sing. Padagos na ibagayway po niyaton sa tuyang mga panyo sa maugmang pagsabat. Viva el Divino Rostro! Viva el Divino Rostro! Viva
May kakamutan, kasing kamutan, kan gabos siringan, inuumaw.
Susog sa imong pagkain, hugas-hugas ako halesa sa akong sala. An maraot sa imong mga mata, ginibo ko. Asin sa kasalan, ipinangidam ako, kan sa kong ina.
Asin maggalang sa imuman sana sa daga, taganing sa huring aldaw, dawog sa dawog, sa nagdadangadang na mahukom sa mo, siya nakaibangong
of
nabubuhay.
the Viadores. This rite of blessing is meant to direct our minds and our hearts to the baptism, to pray for the continual cleansing of our souls, to be truly worthy of our baptismal dignity. Palakpakan niyaton sa itong mga Viadores, ang gapos na mga liwat palakpakan niyato ang satuyang mahal na Diyos, ang satuyang mahal na Jesucristo. Viva el Divino Rostro! Mahal na ina, asin man tangpo kita nagalat-halat, sa tuya man pong papamiibion ang nobina.
In whom I believe, in whom I hope, and whom I love above.
Penafrancia! Vivan sa tuyang mahal na ina! Vivan Patron!
Are in focus for this first edition, we recall and discuss the tragedy that happened 5 decades ago, during a religious celebration of the transfer of the venerated images of the Virgin of Penafrancia and the El Divino Rostro, via a fluvial procession on the Naga River in the city of Naga, Bicol region, the Philippines. Our program's pre-content features the quick rerun of Traslacion procession and celebration, which involved the transfer of the images from the Penafrancia shrine to the Naga Metropolitan Cathedral. Then, followed by a quick pre-fluvial celebration and departure from the cathedral towards the Naga River embarkation landing. We also included during our main discussion and recollection, more snippets of the fluvial coverage, the modern and safe version in the current format of observing the religious celebration. Welcome to our first official long-form outing of Red Monkey Talks show. We are glad and thank you for joining us. In this extended full narrative, we present all the salient details, which include drama and sorrow, personalities and people involved, surrounding the Naga City Colgante Bridge disaster. This whole show shares much of remembrance and recall of the tragedy, and then some. Remembering the sorrows and pain of Penafrancia Fluvial Colgante Bridge tragedy of September 16, 1972. We enriched our discussion with narratives of people who shared their very personal eyewitness account of the ensuing events. Our team took an extra mile and visited the home, or what was before the location, of Mila Obia's former residence. In a hurried and short conversation with her brother Renato, we learned a new, revealing and perplexing information which we are glad to share. We also visited DJ Gladinora, who now resides in Legazpi City, with her home in an appointed location, with an amazing front row view of the majestic Mount Main. The Penafrancia Fluvial Colgante Bridge disaster of September 16, 1972, is a joint project of the Red Monkey Talks and Zabunga 360 inMotion. Interview, research and script by Japadupi, direction and technical supervision by Danton Pascual. Previously, the text was published online in Zabunga360.net, in a 2-part story, The Sorrows and Pain of the Colgante Bridge Disaster of September 16, 1972. This new comprehensive edition comes with more updated information in exhaustive long narrative format. Before we start, thank you for listening and watching this portion of the Red Monkey Talks show, which is also being shared by Zabunga 360 inMotion. Please subscribe, leave a comment, like and share this post, and hit the notification bell. It meant so much for us. Your support will contribute in a huge way to the awareness for others who could learn a thing or two from our content. This early, we extend our big thank you to all supporting our channels. When you like and share our content, you help increase the visibility and distribution of our posts. Imagine, if we can freely check out the pun and pinch and news, information, and culture you need to know. And please continue watching as we move on with the show. Remembering the sorrows and pain of Penafrancia Fluvial Colgante Bridge tragedy of September 16, 1972. Long ago during the month of September, some 51 years ago in our fast recall, and counting. Remembering the sorrows and pain of Penafrancia Fluvial Colgante Bridge tragedy of September 16, 1972. Welcome to our first official long-form outing of Red Monkey Talks show. We are glad and thank you for joining us. In this extended full narrative, we present all the salient details, which include drama and sorrow, personalities and people involved, surrounding the Naga City Colgante Bridge disaster. This whole show shares much of remembrance and recall of the tragedy, and then some. Remembering Penafrancia Fluvial Colgante Bridge disaster of September 16, 1972. Long ago during the month of September, some 51 years ago in our fast recall, and counting. It was Saturday, September 16, 1972, at Barrio del Carmen, Calabunga, Camarines Sur. At the residence of the Abias family. About 11 o'clock, Emerita Abias was done cleaning the dining table, removing the plates, spoons and forks, and drinking glasses. Her daughter Mila finished an early lunch than usual. The mother hugged and bade and wished her good luck. Then, Mila went on rushing for the door to catch the next jeepney ride for Naga City. Earlier, the mother pressed Mila's dress for a very important occasion. Mila, the eldest of the Abiya's children, was a college student of the Catholic and Jesuit-administered Ateneo de Naga College. Very recently, she passed the audition in the search for a new disc jockey and announcer of radio stations DZGE and DWEB-FM of Filipinas Broadcasting Network, with main regional and broadcast offices at Bars, Conaman. Part of Mila's on-the-job training was repertorial and coverage of live events. On that fateful day, the radio stations were bound to cover the Traslacion and Fluvial procession of the Virgin of Penafrancia and the venerated image of the El Divino Rostro. It was the transfer and return of the images from the Naga Cathedral to the Penafrancia shrine. The religious event was, and still is, like a clockwork, every year. It features a walking procession or traslacion, a fluvial procession which is a barge ride, using a specially built watercraft referred to as pagoda, and tugged along by boats, that navigates upstream the Naga River. And then, onto the third and last leg, highlights a short walking procession from the river bank, up until the Penafrancia shrine, the permanent residence of the images. The 10-kilometer ride from Calabunga to Baris almost took her 30 minutes. A good clearance, Mila thought. She arrived at the station on time. Just in time, walkie-talkies were being distributed to reporters and announcers. During a previous staff meeting, they were given post assignments and timings of spot location on the fluvial coverage. As a rookie announcer, Mila was assigned to cover the procession in partner with a senior radio DJ. Her first posting was a vantage point near the gate fronting the main building of the Colegio de Santa Isabel or CSI. It was in that spot that the images were supposed to come out of the Metropolitan Cathedral and Parish of St. John the Evangelist, right after the last 2 o'clock afternoon Mass. Past the hour of 12 noon, September 16, 1972, location, near the CSI. FBN senior DJs Glati Nor-A and her boyfriend Tanging Pogi Larry B went to savor the fiesta atmosphere and merry proceedings. They first dropped by the house of her co-teacher nearby for a much-needed lunch break. Nora, other than working in FBN, was also teaching at the elementary department of the CSI. She was detailed to cover and relay on the spot, voice feed report of the fluvial portion, via the reporting point on the Colgante Bridge. Already, the remote coverage crew of the radio stations had begun with the airing of the Mass inside the Metropolitan Cathedral, which ended at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Past the hour of 3. It was Mila's turn. Rookie Mila went on air. Her report described the vivid details of the goings-on, the volume of people about the street, as far as her eyes saw, the many more who hustled and pushed, wanting to get near the images. She was well adept at her reporting. The station executives at the base were confident they selected the right one. FBN regional manager Salvio Fortuno was monitoring the live coverage of his team on board the announcer's booth. It was a smooth-sailing stint of a coverage, so far, he mused. The procession part went well, like the previous years. It featured the images exiting the Naga Metropolitan Cathedral. The images were carried on the shoulders of male voyagers, through a structure called undas. Only male devotees were allowed to carry the image, historically and religiously, ever since the devotion was begun in the year of 1710 or so. That was 262 years ago. Male devotees took turns in carrying the images on designated stations, and made the procession time-consuming and almost directionless. It took longer time for the procession in navigating the streets, and reached the landing site by the Tabaco Bridge. It was there that the waiting watercraft was anchored. And eventually, past the hour of 4 in the afternoon, the images were loaded on the Vanquerna, the makeshift barge. Earlier, the Naga River has swollen in height due to generous rain. Many religious devotees believe the rain is a miracle that happens, like a clockwork, too, every year, and before or during the Penafrancia fluvials. Rainfall generously add a good volume of needed water on the shallow tributary of the Bicol River, which enables the barge to sail on, in an unobstructed course. Between the hour of 4:30 and 4:45 in the afternoon, the fluvial entourage came into full view by the Colgante vantage report point. Reporters from different radio stations including DZRB, DZDR, DZXN, and DZG located themselves near on the mid of the hanging and jiggly wood contraption of a bridge, the Colgante. From the elevated structure, one can see the Metropolitan Naga Cathedral, which was a stone's throw away, but also a few meters from the nearest and corner building of the CSI. I think it was about in the year of 1970 when I first saw Colgante Bridge, according to Joseph Ivan Ubuko's posted lengthy recollection. Weeks before my first visit to Colgante Bridge, my friends warned me to walk carefully while crossing the Colgante Bridge, because it is a very old and rickety structure. My brother even told me that you could actually make the whole bridge shake by just jumping hard on the middle of it. My friends also advised me not to cross the bridge when darkness falls, because carnivorous evil spirits are believed to rise from the bottom of the bridge to grab unsuspecting people who happen to be crossing the bridge at night. The lady in white is also known to live underneath the bridge and sings enchanting songs to lure unsuspecting locals to their demise. No Filipino horror story is complete unless the white lady sings. One afternoon, Ubuko continued his recollection. My brother and I decided to check out the Colgante Bridge and see if the stories we have heard were indeed true. After school at around 5 p.m., we went to the bridge and stood at the western end of the bridge, by the Penafrancia Avenue side. I looked at its foundation and saw a few large wooden posts, some of which were slightly leaning. To make sure it was safe to cross, we waited for a car to cross over the bridge. After a few minutes, we saw a car drive up to the bridge. The car stopped at the beginning of the bridge, and the driver shifted to gear number 1 before proceeding cautiously. I noticed that the whole bridge swayed slightly while the car was crossing. We waited for a few minutes for the shaking of the bridge to stop before my brother and I decided to cross it. Joseph added that my brother was braver than I, and so he casually walked over the bridge like it was not a big deal. While I was crossing the bridge, I extended my arms horizontally to keep my balance even, and made sure that every wooden plank that I stepped on would hold my weight before taking another step. I became terrified when I saw that one of the wooden planks on the pedestrian path was missing. My brother, who was then standing on the other side of the bridge, ridiculed me and kept on shouting for me to hurry up. He said,
Ivan, para mabalyo ka lang ning tulay, sobraman ang kaartehan mo. Dalian mo tatiba at abuton kita ning matangang banggi digdi.
Ivan, all you need to do is cross the bridge. Quit acting up. Hurry because I don't want to wait for you until midnight, Ivan noted. Colgante is a Spanish-derived word that loosely means hanger hanging. The exact location of the hanging or suspension wood bridge is at a mid-section of the short Santunja Street. It served as the main cross-link between Penafrancia Avenue and Blumentritt Street of Barrio de Hyangding, on the other side of the Naga River. The old bridge, which was damaged before, was repaired and reconstructed as a somewhat weak hanging wood bridge. The undermanned Naga City Police force assigned in the area made it clear, but was too helpless to enforce, that only media personalities in broadcast and print covering the Fluvial event, and few people were allowed to stay in the area. The devout Catholics and enthusiasts were not contained, however. It was jam-packed to the hilt by the hundreds. Earlier in the afternoon, a sudden change of anchors on the base required DJs, Nora and Larry, to return and went back to the radio broadcast office, upon learning that Mila was reassigned to cover the Colgante reporting point, together with assistant station manager Sal Orban. Nora then went on board and received reports from the field. When I left home to watch the 1972 Fluvial procession, Rotitu Hinova Valiente, I told my parents and relatives that I was going to watch the procession near the Colgante Bridge. My high school classmates were with me that day, and when we reached an area near the Colgante Bridge, we saw that the crowd was thick as a beehive. We decided not to squeeze through the crowd, but instead decided to visit the home of a lovely girl, Valiente wrote. I left the house with my older first cousin, Benner Manalig, that day to watch the Penafrancia Fluvial procession, Chudilak Kindaning wrote. Before we left, my mother told my cousin,
Bantayan mo yan si Judy. Dahil mo pabayaan, tay ka ang matuwa.
Watch your cousin Chodi. Do not leave him because you are older. My cousin obediently agreed to my mother. Chidi continued, my cousin suggested that we watch the fluvial procession at the Colgante Bridge. When we got to the bridge, we saw a lot of people on it. There were children and teenagers swimming on the river near the bridge, and some children would go to the top middle part of the bridge and jump to the river. I also saw ice cream vendors chiming their tiny bells, balloon vendors waiting for customers, and balut vendors roaming among the crowd. The atmosphere was merry and relaxed, Chidi recalled. The Colgante Bridge, a 15-year-old structure of steel girders and wood planks, groaned under the weight of over 100 of warm bodies. Nobody, not even the public safety authorities assigned overseeing the area, had a good and exact count of the people on its belly. But they knew too well that beyond 100 folks on the bridge was more than too many. We have been waiting at the bridge for about an hour already, Chidi continued, when I felt the bridge sway a little bit. I heard a teenager shout,
Magagaba na ang tulay.
the bridge is going to collapse. Something inside me told me to leave the bridge. When I told my cousin that I wanted to leave, he became upset, telling me,
Ano ka naman, Chudi? Itong harani ng mag-abot ang pagoda? Saka man gusto mong maghali. Kung gusto mong umuli, magsudo kang umuli.
What's the matter with you, Chidi? Just when the barge carrying the image is about to arrive, you decide that you want to leave. If you want to go home alone. I responded to my cousin,
Mapuli ako, pero bahala kang mag-eksplika kay nanay.
I am going home alone, but you have to explain this to mom. This made Benner worried because he remembered that my mother specifically instructed him to watch over me. Benner was quite perturbed when we left Colgante Bridge, relieved, Chidi thought. Over at the Colgante, Mila and Sal were trapped by warm bodies, edging for the vantage view of the approaching Vanquerna, carrying the images of the Virgin of Penafrancia and the Divino Rostro. But this did not prevail them from reporting the events. As the view of the pagoda became more visible, the people's built-up excitement and expectation became more heightened, and restlessness grew more. And the more the people oogled, the more the thick crowd jostled for a good view. Some were praying the rosary, many were chanting Viva la Virgen, and Viva el Divino Rostro. The bridge seemed to jolt, in uncontrolled motion, like swing and vibrating. The pagoda was approximately between 800 and 850 feet away from the bridge. At a distance, and viewed from the Vanquerna, the Colgante Bridge looked beautiful, with colorful buntings, and adorned with different lighted colored bulbs. As the near-dying sun slowly poised its descent, the bridge's silhouette on the Naga River provided a lovely backdrop for the still unfolding, almost near culmination, of the Penafrancia religious festivities. It was the perfect scene of the tableau, of combined sights and sounds, rowdy, expectant, religious and yet merry. On the Colgante, the religious faithful, the enthusiasts, and the visitors jostled for a better view of the fluvial scenario down on the river, about 30 feet below. The same commotion on the bridge and fluvial scene on the river that Mila Bias and Sal Orban, of radio stations DZGE and DWEBFM were describing. Previously, the bridge was closed to large vehicular traffic, which was much weakened by a recent typhoon in June of the same year. There were countless small riverboats, which tugged the Vanquerna with the images of the Virgin of Penafrancia and the El Divino Rostro. Also on board the main watercraft were priests, lay ministers, male guests and the chief of police of the city, among others. As per customary practice, no female, with a religious, patron, enthusiast or tourist, has ever been accommodated to accompany the images aboard the Vanquerna, since the traditional fluvial was begun in the years which started in the 1700s. Many said that the image of the Penafrancia, representing the Virgin Mary, was to be the only and usual woman on the barge. Long, flowing, haired Mila was on air that time. She was on the top of her form, describing how people on the bridge jostled for a view. She was invoking the listeners to give thanks to the patroness of Bicol for the many blessings received. Her mother, Emerita, felt very proud of her daughter while monitoring the radio report at home. The floating barge was less than 800 feet away. As the pagoda came closer to the vantage view by the bridge, excited onlookers on the river banks and on the Colgante became more restless. The jiggly bridge heaved and jerked. Then a loud cracking boom sounded, emanating from the bridge. Few seconds later, the swaying Colgante bridge disintegrated, bringing with it the people who were caught astonished, shocked and fearful. Over at DZG, The walkie-talkie links of meal and sal crackled, then went silent, and eventually cut off the air. On board the announcer's booth, Nora and Larry, who were taking their turns on board with the simultaneous broadcast of the sister stations, heard the brief gasp of commotion from the walkie-talkie before it was disconnected. They then signaled for the technician, who readily switched to another waiting reporter online. At the Colgante, big shards and pieces and planks of wood fell on the river. People aboard the bridge also went down with the structure. The debris and people from the falling bridge barely missed the front line of small river boats and boatmen tagging and pulling the Vanquerna. It was about 15 minutes later after we left the Colgante bridge, Black Hindanum related, when we heard that the bridge collapsed. We were able to dodge disaster because I listened to that voice inside me. In a shared recollection by Tony Lugney Toon, I was working as a salesman for Coca-Cola back in 1972, and I was assigned in Naga City. I was drinking beer with a couple of my friends in a house near the Colgante bridge. We had a good view of the Colgante from the veranda of the house. While we were watching the crowd at the Colgante bridge, we suddenly saw the whole bridge collapse before our eyes. With the tragedy, we ended our drinking session immediately. Naga City Police Major Eduardo Rey remembered that day. It was like a nightmare. I was about 240 meters, equivalent to about 787.4 feet, from the Colgante bridge riding on the barge carrying the Penafrancia image, when the bridge collapsed before my eyes. The next thing I knew, people were bobbing up and down the dark waters of the river, clawing one another to stay afloat. It was every man for himself. Indeed. At the area by the falling bridge, children, men and women, found themselves floating and mixed with the wrecked bridge and debris. They fought for their lives, clawed at one another. The abled ones pulled themselves to either side of the riverbanks. Alert devotees who were on the banks helped grab grief-stricken survivors and fished out bodies. Many people on the bridge that fell died. Some may have succumbed immediately upon hitting the murky waters of the Naga River, struck by falling bodies, debris and crushed on boats beneath. We presumed that the victims may have not processed fast enough the predicament they were into, due to that all-too-quick event. Others have drowned under the weight of the debris. Many more died from electrocution. The electric wires that hang and lighted the colorful light bulbs also caused death. Some bodies fished out of the river suffered electrical burns. There was total pandemonium on the site. There was wailing, crying and shouting. I went to Colgante Bridge when I finally found it safe to go near it. Yubuko continued his narrative. The entrance towards the bridge was packed with excited onlookers. It was chaotic. I was then standing on Penafrancia Avenue, and I could see people standing at the edge of where the bridge broke, and they were looking down at the river. Majority of them were just curious bystanders. Fearing that my parents might get worried, I decided to go home. Ivan narrated. Meanwhile, the fluvial procession was stopped immediately. The Vanquerna with the religious images on board was left unscathed by the falling bridge. By sheer coincidence, it was at a far and safe distance from the disaster zone. Again, the religious community considered and attributed the spared destruction of the Vanquerna and the images as a miracle. On board the watercraft, Catholic priests, Monsignor Salvador Naz and Monsignor Domingo Nebrez, led the removal of the images from their respective undas. The occupants disembarked from the watercraft, waded into the river, mud wet but unharmed. The images were passed from one otter to another, up until the shoulder of the riverbank by the backyard property owned by Francisco Ositri. Francisco was a dispatcher of bus company Pantrenco. By coincidence, Francisco was building his house. There was a good stock of lumber supplied from Tomban, Tinambak, all ready for the construction work. The backyard was planted with thick banana trees. The voyageurs hastily cleared a pathway by weeding off the bushy banana leaves. Ositri was then convinced to spread over the lumber on the wet and slippery ground. It was converted to a quick pathway for safe and easy passage of the people who came from the Vanquerna. From that time on, the pathway came to be referred to as the Hinawasan. In Bicol, it meant the place where the images and the people passed and emerged or surfaced. That pathway led and connected to the existing Mabini Street and ultimately intersect the Penafrancia Avenue. while some devotees from the barge opted to go with the group that climbed up the riverbank by the Aussie Trees Yard. Some managed to clamber up the other side of the bank bordering Baryu Da Yungdum, towards Blue Men Treat Street. Eventually, there were two groups of devotees that managed to get off the river on both sides of the riverbanks. The Mabini group led and continued the interrupted procession on Penafrancia Avenue. The Blue Men Tree faction also led another procession towards Magsaysay Avenue. We have to note here that some of the people, devotees on the streets including those that came from the Vanquerna were in tears, crying, and perhaps, still in shock and distraught, brought by the scene witnessed of the collapsing Colgante, or overheard over the radio. They hurriedly walked the street and eventually met at the intersection of Magsaysay and Penafrancia Avenues. The merged group walked the last hundreds of feet or so until the doorstep of the open doors of the Penafrancia shrine, which was already prepared for the homecoming of the religious images. There was no merry, raucous chanting of Viva la Virgen or Viva el Divino Rostro. Only somber mood prevailed during the last leg of the procession until the shrine. After our lively visit to Maria Aelina's house, we decided to walk back to Centro or downtown, Valiente wrote. While we were walking along Pangunknipin Avenue heading to Centro, we learned from other folks that the Colgante Bridge fell. Along the way, we met Mang Etong more or less. Back in those days, there were just two names in photography known to the Catholic schools around the old cathedral. Mang Etong's and the Bragaese studio. No one went to Arevalo's because that was UNC's territory. As we approached Mang Etong, we noticed that he was soaking wet. Mang Etong told us, Nagabanoy and Colgante. The Colgante collapsed. I am not sure if we helped him, but we rushed to the Colgante bridge to find out for ourselves what had happened. Grief and despair mobbed the scene. Names were being screamed. Roger Diaz, now an officer in the military, remembered the scene as a wet hell. It was almost past 6 in the evening when I arrived back home, Valiente continued. From the street, I could sense that our house was full of people, and all the lights were on. When the people inside our house saw me, they all came alive with shouts, screams of surprise and relief. My sister cried. My grandmother's voice in Tiganyun dialect went above the din.
Ayaw na pag-uriti.
Don't scold him anymore. When the excitement subsided, T2 revealed, I was informed that one of the names that were listed as a fatality in the Colgante Bridge tragedy was a Valiente. Upon hearing this, my uncles, brother and a cousin went to local radio stations in Naga to verify if I was indeed one of the people who died in the accident. My relatives also went to the provincial hospital and other sites to check the corpses taken from the Colgante. They went through agonizing moments while pulling the sheets off of every corpse to check their missing relative. I could not remember anything else at home. I did not even explain where I was, for that would have been the most trivial explanation for that day. For some time, the churches of Naga Cathedral, San Francisco and the Penafrancia Shrine started its church bells ringing. Joined by a few of Naga City's police cars on the scene with wailing sirens. The melancholy death tolls consumed an eerie night, summarily closing for the day. The once joyful fluvial festivities turned deadly and tragic. Where local radio stations fielded reporters in covering the fluvial procession, the attention was turned to broadcasting the unfolding rescue at the river. Notifying unknown relatives of the identified and still unidentified victims. The government of the province and the city was so ill-prepared and ill-equipped. There was no equipment on hand readily available for mounting a rescue and retrieval operation. No city or provincial personnel was ever trained or available to lead one, either. Former Senator Edmundo B. Sia, owner of the Filipinas Broadcasting Network, instructed station manager Fortuno to dispatch a probe team for Colgante. It was primarily to locate and determine the whereabouts and safety of its personnel, Mila Bias and Sal Orban. Orban would later emerge from the murky waters of Naga River, alive and gasping, with bruises, and then recounted the ordeal he had undergone. He lost track of his partner Mila when the bridge went down. Nora recounted, Larry and I went to the provincial hospital, the Mother Seton Hospital and St. John Hospital. We looked for an injured Mila. While searching for her, we saw lifeless bodies lined up on the alleyways of the hospitals. They were all covered with white cloths. There was pandemonium, the facilities were very noisy. Many people, maybe relatives or friends, wailing and crying out loud for their lost or dead loved ones. Nora continued, my co-teacher from Colegio to Santa Isabel, Miss Carmen Lee, was one of the lifeless body on the alley. I recalled before noon that fateful day, she refused to go with us for lunch, and opted to watch the Fluvial at the bridge, instead. Carmen was an adopted daughter of the sisters managing the Colegio to Santa Isabel. When she was a baby, she was left at the doorstep of the school, presumably, maybe by her mother or relative, where nuns found her. She was nurtured and educated by the nuns at the CSI, Nora related. When Carmen graduated in college, she was hired as a teacher at the CSI. It seemed that many residential houses in Bagumbayan have lost a member of the family, very sad, Nora added to her recollection. Later, a team of Philippine Navy frogmen arrived and helped scour the wreckage area, dived countless and many times for bodies that were pinned down the bottom of the river by heavy debris. One of the lifeless bodies the frogmen found was that of Mila. She had a big bruise on her head. Our house was located near the Pangunknipan Bridge along the banks of the Bicol River, recounted Junie Alblay. When the news about the Colgante collapse reached my parents, they started gathering my brothers and sisters to make sure that all of us were accounted for. We were not allowed to leave the house. At around 6 p.m., we all saw a body floating by Naga River near our house. Somebody came riding a boat and retrieved the body. Witnesses said that people around the area continued their rescue and recovery operation together with the frogmen until they almost run out of their breaths. They were totally exhausted. In a recollection of events, Todimi Siyas and Marissa Ocampo jointly wrote and detailed that, desiring to help, many jumped instinctively into the river. With prodding from Naga policeman Delphin Platoon, who calmed the frantic crowd. They fished out bodies and survivors until they got lame tired, way beyond exhaustion. Muscle cramps and fatigue overtook the shivering rescuers, who got relief from ablutions of oil of wintergreen, a liquid balm given by nameless people in the crowd. The injuries were as apparent as the telltale signs of drowning after the Colgante Bridge collapse, Misi Yaz and Ocampo recounted. Electrical burns made victim recognition hard. Grimy detritus from river trash messed up some victims' bloodied faces whose fingers, in cadaveric flexion, looked as if they were in prayer. With rigor mortis, the bodies were hastily covered by wet newspapers. Many onlookers cried. Overwhelmed by the horrific scene, others threw up in the shadows of a black sky. Many of the recovered bodies were lined up on the paved streets surrounding the disaster area. The unclaimed were wrapped or covered in newspapers or brown craft papers. Later, bodies were placed in hastily made, improvised, rough, unsanded wooden boxes. An eyewitness account claimed that some victims were immediately rushed to the Colegio de Santa Isabel and other nearby hospitals for treatment. Bodies of the deceased were laid on the riverbanks waiting to be identified or brought to the mortuary, with Father Alfonso Grajida blessing each with holy oils.
So,
Going back now to the tragedy of Colgante. That is the advantage of an old man. I was there when it happened. I
okay.
was still assigned in Norte. I came here October. This happened 72, September.
Yes,
Okay, I came usually for the fiesta. And as soon as we heard about this, we were just near the cathedral, our home. I rushed to the Colgante and saw the people falling into the river and the boats going down and half of the bridge going down like that. And people were dying. One thing I could do, and I think it made me very happy, I was giving the general absolution to people. Sige lang, I was giving the general absolution for all the people falling down into the river. And I can't imagine, perhaps I saved, with the help already, I saved a lot of people before they forgot their breath or their life. And that is the beautiful thing I experienced there. And then I saw these people who did not have any training, dumping the people into jeeps, without applying the first aid. I could see some, like one of them is Dr. Claros, saving people, no? Applying the artificial respiration, cardiovascular resuscitation, and they were surviving. But these people who will come into the jeep, being brought to one of the stations, all died. People being dumped into jeeps, being brought to one of the stations in Naga. I heard over 100 ba yun? About 100 died. And others who survived, well, they were just blessed, no? Those who were able to swim away. Because aside from the falling bridge, there was this electricity being opened to people and in the water. And the water was the conductor, the electricity, and people were dying because of that electric shock. So, here is what happened. There were Boy Scouts on both ends of the bridge. Mayroon pong mga scout nagbabantay duman sa duwang opening kan bridge kan Colgante, trying to stop people from coming. But since they were small boys, they ignored the Boy Scouts, and people started coming and filling up the Colgante. Kaya buminagsak. Ano ang lesson? Be prepared, kasi we can be taken by him anytime, and we cannot know when or where or how we will go.
One of the retrieved fatalities was Santiago Ojeda of Guwa, Camarines Sur. He witnessed the event and used a camera and voice recorder which was recovered later on the river. In his recorded observation, he mentioned that, quote, "This bridge is full of people, and I don't see anyone directing traffic here," unquote. I was having a drinking session with the Morales brothers at the Morales studio located in front of our house, when all of a sudden we heard a commotion coming from everywhere, recalled Rex Imperial. After hearing that the Colgante bridge had collapsed, my co-drinkers got worried and told me that their father was at the bridge taking pictures. They immediately got up and rushed to the scene. I was about to go with them, but I was too drunk to do so. So I opted to stay behind and drink some coffee to make me sober. I listened to the radio and was able to monitor what was happening at the bridge. It was then that I learned that many died at the incident. After waiting for about an hour or so, we saw Mang Edong, the father of the Morales brothers, arrived at the house, all wet. He had some bruises on his arms and face, but he looked alright. I also saw his professional camera strapped at his side all wet and slightly damaged. Obviously, he was one of the victims, but fortunately he survived, Imperial noted. Mang Edong narrated to us how he survived. Imperial continued, by holding on a beam as the bridge collapsed underneath him. According to him, the people who died either drowned or got crushed from the falling debris. I remembered that the bridge was made of lumber. We were all glad that Mang Edong was safe, Rex ended his narrative. According to Noor, Mila was my kababine. We lived in the same town. We, Larry and me, and some staff of FBN, went to Del Carmen. Mila's remains was already there. Her long flowing hair was still dripping with river water. FBN donated a green-colored coffin and an unspecified amount of financial aid for the family. Mila's mother confided that little did their family had any hint, the last words from Mila's report would be her last memorable lines would utter, and her family would hear. Later in the week, she was brought to her final resting place at the Catholic cemetery in San Isidro of Calabunga. Nora revealed, "I don't have vivid memories of the Colgante collapse since we were still in grade 3 then. As far as I can remember, my brothers and I were at the compound of the Ursua family at Penafrancia Avenue. We always go to the Ursua's residence every Penafrancia fiesta to watch the fluvial procession," related Jerry Zantua. From the vantage point of the Ursua's backyard, Jerry recalled, "We saw the horrific collapse of the Colgante bridge. Our Dirina had not yet passed under the bridge, because only a few boats had gone through when the bridge collapsed. I even saw somebody jump down to the river as the bridge was collapsing. People tried to scramble up the collapsed bridge, but it was a futile effort because as they tried to climb up the bridge, another portion of the bridge completely crumbled. As we went home at our house in Concepcion Avenue near the provincial hospital, we went by the compound of DZRB station of ABS-CBN network. There, we saw the dead bodies of the victims lying on the basketball court. These were the cadavers that were not accommodated by the provincial hospital. Curious people lined up to see the bodies, and many tried to find out if they could recognize any one of them as being either their relative or friend, Zantua vividly recalled. I was at home when we heard over the radio in the late afternoon about Colgante's tragic collapse, Cesar Bagat-Yan wrote. Meanwhile, most of the guards at the Naga City jail were mobilized in the ensuing Colgante rescue operation. The lapse of judgment on the side of the local jail management was taken advantage by the detainees. It was a window of opportunity. They staged a commotion and caused the remaining 2 guards left behind being overpowered. The Makraya paved the way for the escape of 47 detainees out of 52. An interesting side note here. A lingering rumor, then, surfaced, that one of the patrons aboard the Vanquerna was Imelda Marcos. But this was never confirmed nor refuted by any of the many voyageurs, laypeople and religious officials who were also aboard the watercraft. But that rumor received a scathing and pungent reaction from disgusted folks. Although, some were quickly defensive and opined that it was only to spite her. At the disaster zone, the retrieval operation continued until the early morning hours of Sunday, September 17, 1972, the actual feast day and Penafrancia fiesta. I remembered going to the site together with some of my friends the following day. Cesar continued his narration. Rescue and retrieval operations were still ongoing, and the only memories which left a permanent imprint in my mind were the broken bridge and the numerous slippers of different sizes and shapes, which were strewn all over the place, with some still floating on the river. There was a lot of sadness in our neighborhood during that time. I really don't know for how long was it, but for a good period of time, I did not walk going to Naga Parochial School, simply because the Colgante Bridge was an integral part of my route. I was a 3rd grader back in September 1972, Fluvial revealed. The following week after the Colgante Bridge tragedy, we came back to school at Naga Parochial School, and found one of my classmates named Arna Lavila missing. All my classmates at TAL section wondered where Arna was. Our teacher sadly told us that Arna was one of the fatalities of the Colgante Bridge disaster. My sister, Inga, also told me that one of the teachers of Colegio de Santa Isabel died at Colgante, Fulhantes recalled. Naga City Police Chief Elias Palma tasked Patrolman Ernesto A. Jan for the conduct of investigation of the tragic accident. Ernesto came up with the finding that from the salvaged pile and heap of timber from the bridge, the barrel bolts were still intact, but the shaft embedded in the wood has tapered and corroded. This 1972 Colgante tragedy was not the first accidental destruction of the bridge. The same bridge and location was also a scene of a deadly accident, and by timing and coincidence, also during the conduct of the Penafrancia fluvial procession, 24 years before, on September 1948. That first Colgante bridge collapse claimed the lives of 30 persons. Meanwhile, Mayor Cibolo had difficulty in the conduct of mobilization and access of the city's resources. Politics showed its ugly fang, which played to the detriment of the people's welfare and interest. Cibolo belonged to the Liberal Party, which opposed the Nacionalista Party of Marcos. It took some time before the Department of Public Works and Highways would lend a crane for the operation in Colgante. The national government wasted 3 days before it raised a finger to help the city, but only after Cibolo was forced to align himself to the Marcos administration. Thereafter, the mayor got word from Malacanang the assurance that funding for a construction of new concrete replacement bridge over Santana can be made available. After 5 days of the infamous fall of the Colgante, the event was overshadowed with the rumored declaration of martial law in the Philippines on September 21, 1972. There was blackout of the coverage and information of the deadly saga, as the mourning and burial of victims were completely shrouded into the canopy of total fear and uncertainty. The people braced for the unknown rim and possible abuse of power and vindictive character of martial law. Total fear became reality when the Bicolano Secretary of Public Information Francisco Kitadid read the proclamation 1081 over radio and television nationwide. Martial law enveloped the country in one sweep and stroke of an announcement. Then, broadcast networks and print media were shut down, silenced, while media broadcast practitioners, journalists and vocal critics of Marcos were manhunted, rounded up and detained by the Philippine Constabulary and the Philippine Army. Electric service in Naga City and neighboring areas served by the Bicol Electric Company experienced a blackout, too. It took about another week or two before I decided to go to Colgante Bridge to find out how it looked like, Joseph Ivan related. When I got there, there was already a temporary single-lane cross bridge that was constructed along the side of the fallen bridge. Like the original wooden Colgante Bridge, the tiny cross bridge would also sway when a person walked on it. When I was crossing the cross bridge, I looked down at the water. The bottom of the river is barely clear, but I could see white objects that I could not identify. Someone told me that they were body parts, but I did not believe them because the rescuers were able to retrieve all the bodies that were found underneath the bridge. Joseph narrated. The fatalities of the tragic Colgante downfall. Well, it was widely believed and claimed by some that as much as 138 or 140 people perished in the hapless tragedy. No one has come out with factual listing or documents supporting the assumption, not even from the media or government. There was an accepted assumption that some victims were claimed by distraught families, even without proper notification of the authorities. As there were hundreds more were injured, the authorities also failed miserably in conducting verification and documentation, which completely exposed them of massive incompetence, and devoid of compassion, and total disregard from public accountability and responsibility. The family of the victims, injured or fatality, could have not forgiven them, after all, and maybe, up to this time. And here is the listing and final roll call of the documented victims, that they may find peace and rest forever. Even with confirmed listed fatalities, only 38 families filed and pursued a case against the city government of Naga during the term of Vicente Cibolo. Attorney Agapito III represented the city, while Attorney Luis Henril Jr. stood for the families of the victims. The first hearing was presided by Judge Gloria Navarro of Regional Trial Court No. 20. The case moved in a snail pace. True enough, the saying that justice delayed is justice denied applied perfectly well on this situation. It took 19 years later before the families who filed the case were indemnified by the city. The highest monetary award was 10,000 pesos, but unfortunately, many received 2,500 pesos only during the term of Mayor Jesse Robredo. Taking into account the inflationary factor, 1 Philippine peso in the year 1981 is valued at, or equivalent to, 19 pesos and 58 centavos in 2022, the closest Philippine inflation conversion reference we have so far. So that, the minimum indemnification received by the family of victims at Philippine pesos of 2,500 is equivalent to 48,950 Philippine pesos in 2022. By the way, we have not confirmed information if the injured victims ever got free medical assistance, or the fatalities received decent burial assistance from the government. As a hint, it even took 19 years for the family of the victims before they received a measly indemnification. In 1973, construction was completed of a new all-weather concrete Colgante bridge, opened for vehicular traffic, which is being used up until now. In 2014, the City Council of Naga passed Resolution No. 2014-045 at the behest of the Barangay Council of San Francisco. It renamed Mabini Street, of the same locality, which intersects Penafrancia Avenue, to Hinawasan Street. The proponents claimed the new name came from the street's historical role, as the location where the images of Our Lady of Penafrancia and El Divino Rostro passed through after being brought back to land during the aftermath of the Penafrancia Fluvial Procession tragedy of September 16, 1972. Mayor John Bongat signed the ordinance on July 22, 2014. Some lessons are learned the hard and deadly way. In the case of the Penafrancia Fluvial Colgante Bridge collapse, the lesson happened twice, once in 1948 and another in 1972. It were lessons learned in the most hurtful, hardest and deadliest way ever. The modern Penafrancia Traslacion and Fluvial Procession was updated with safety in the mind by the organizers of the festivities, which include the Catholic hierarchy of the Archdiocese of Caceres, the local city government, the peacekeeping officials, the laypeople and devotees, in one umbrella. Now, the Traslacion procession features the images carried on the shoulders of designated priests out the main back doors of the cathedral, to the quadricentennial ark and stage altar, for the 2 o'clock afternoon Mass. After the Mass, the images are mounted onto the wheeled carriages without being carried on the shoulders of rowdy, intoxicated voyadores. The construction of barge follows strict safety guideline and precautionary oversight. The 3 concrete bridges of Pangunknaban, Colgante and Magsaysay, the Vanquerna will pass are heavily manned by peacekeeping personnel during the fluvial event. Complete trivia on the Penafrancia. The statue of Our Lady of Penafrancia in Naga City is an image of the Blessed Virgin Mary and the child Jesus in her arms. Miguel Rubles de Covarrubias, a Spanish seminarian studying at the University of Santo Tomas in Manila, experienced series of miraculous healings from the stampede of the image of the Virgin of Penafrancia, which was a copy of a canvas painting made in the 1690s, also of the Virgin of Penafrancia. The original canvas painting was based from the image found by a wealthy Portuguese man in the name of Simon Vela, in the mountains of Penafrancia in Spain on May 19, 1434. Miguel was invited to Nueva Caceres, and later ordained priest, by Bishop Andrés González. Miguel later became the parish priest of the Nueva Caceres Cathedral, and vicar general of the diocese. Sometime in the year after 1710, he built a chapel made of bamboo and nipa by the banks of Naga River. Then he commissioned a local artisan for hardwood carving of like image of the Penafrancia based on the stampede in his possession. The image found by Vela is now enshrined in Salamanca, Spain, while the stampede is now in the Penafrancia shrine in Paco, Manila. In 1741, the first stone church, what would become of the shrine of Penafrancia, was built by Most Reverend Isidro de Revelo. When Spanish Bishop Francisco Gainza was assigned to the Diocese of Nueva Caceres in 1863, he led the renovation of the church at the present location of the parish church of Penafrancia in Naga City. Gainza issued a decree on September 1, 1864, which institutionalized the Traslacion procession on the Friday before the Feast of the Holy Name of Mary, when the image was transferred to the cathedral through a procession for the 9-day solemn novena. Then on the afternoon of the 9th day, Saturday, the image was brought back through the Traslacion por el Rio, now known as the Fluvial Procession, to her sanctuary for the celebration of principal feast day on the next day, Sunday. In the year 1895, Pope Leo XIII issued a rescript fixing the feast day of Our Lady of Penafrancia on the first Sunday of July, and declaring the same as the principal patron of the city of Nueva Cáceres, dated June 4 and 10, on the same year. In the year 1905, Pope Pius X, through a rescript dated April 8 of the same year, granted the wishes of the Catholics of Nueva Cáceres, led by the first Filipino Bishop George I. Barlin. The solemnity of Our Lady of Penafrancia was permanently assigned to the Sunday after the octave of the Nativity of the Blessed Virgin. The transfer of the Penafrancia festivities from July to September has been the tradition followed up to this day. A petition for canonical coronation made by American Bishop of Nueva Cáceres, John Bernard McGinley from Pope Benedict XV, was approved on 13 May 1920. But it was not until September 20, 1924, that the image had actual canonical coronation as Queen and Patroness of Bicol, by the Apostolic Delegate, Monsignor William Guglielmo Piani, at the Naga Cathedral grounds. Unfortunately, Bishop McGinley was already transferred to California, United States. That diocesan administrator, Most Reverend Francisco Reyes, led the celebrations. A Spanish priest, Maximo Juguera, composed the winning piece that became the anthem for the purpose of the religious coronation, entitled Himno in Nuestra Señora de Penafrancia, now also known as Resuini Vibranti. Ever since, the hymn has become part of the celebration. The Bicol version was written by Father Chudimo Pasis, with the help of Bicol priests Father Jesus Esplana and Father Sol Sais. In 1960, the first Archbishop of Cáceres, Pedro Polo Sanco Santos, planned of building a new and bigger church as a basilica and permanent sanctuary of the Lady of Penafrancia. But he died in 1965. On October 30, 1973, the Penafrancia Shrine was created into a parish with the auxiliary bishop of Cáceres, Concordio Sarti, as its first parish priest. On April 18, 1976, the second Archbishop Chupis Tuvi Alberto delegated the responsibility on the construction of a new church to Bishop Sarti, on a site less than a kilometer away from the shrine, but on the opposite side of the Naga River. The lot was donated by the family of Macario and Irene Mariano. When Sard was assigned to the Diocese of Sorsogon, Bishop Sofio Balsi not only took the helm as the new parish head, but continued the supervision of the construction of the unfinished building. On August 15, 1981, at around 4:30 in the morning, the caretaker of the shrine discovered the image of the Our Lady of Penafrancia was missing. Parochial Vicar Father Juan Celso confirmed on August 17 the theft, as police disclosed the robbers sought the iron grills at the back of the church. The manto of the image and the steel bar which held the image were found on the cemetery grounds of the shrine. While the identity of the thieves remained or was cloaked in mystery, church officials ordered for the production of a replica for the 1981 Penafrancia celebrations. On September 1981, the new church for the Virgin of Penafrancia was finally completed. In May 1982, an antique dealer and said to be a Penafrancia devotee, Francisco Vicen, acquired a let that the stolen image was being offered for sale by a man from Mabini Street of Malati, Manila, while it allegedly was in the hands of a friend. When the information reached Shrine Rector Father Florencio Iliana, the image was alleged to have been moved to Cebu already. Between September 3 and 5 of 1982, Father Iliana received a box containing an image broken in several pieces, purported to be of the stolen icon. This episode of the loss and retrieval of the image of Penafrancia was like a perplexing, unfinished suspense and mystery movie. For while a box was received already, why the need for Bishop Balsi with Father Juan Celso to travel to Manila and authenticate it and confirm the genuineness of the image? 3 days later, on September 8, it was revealed that the stolen image was found. In the evening of the same day, a caravan from Manila arrived at the cathedral and welcomed by devotees, despite the rage of Typhoon Ruping. It was not revealed if the caravan led by Bishop Balsi was in possession of another image or the image in pieces received by Father Iliana, which was pieced together. Thereafter, a Thanksgiving Mass was held at the Naga Metropolitan Cathedral in celebration for the finding and return of the image. While the image was acknowledged to have been found, the perpetrator or perpetrators of the thievery were never caught, identified and punished. The church officials were totally mum, and never disclosed the real tipster, or from whom and where it was recovered. It seemed the real truth was locked in secrecy, any details surrounding the thievery, recovery and whatever behind-the-scene negotiation and concession on the retrieval of the image. Again, the rumor mill became preoccupied and incessant that accused the partner of a powerful politician, well known for love of antique works of art, was the culprit in the robbery. Even as during that time, the strongman grip on power and conjugal rule of Ferdinand Marcos and his wife Imelda was already showing cracks, and on the decline, no one stepped up to inquire. Yet, Naga City patrolman Ronaldo Niula sacrificed his life in the conduct of the investigation in pursuit on the theft of the image, which did not get the deserved attention and justice. On May 22, 1982, the new church building was initially dedicated as the Church of Nuestra Señora de Penafrancia, with the attendance of the Archbishop of Manila Jaime Cardinal Sin, and Archbishop of Cebu Julio Cardinal Rosales. On May 22, 1985, on the third anniversary of the dedication of the new Penafrancia Church, Pope John Paul II granted the petition of Archbishop Leonardo Z. Legazpi for the privileges of a minor basilica to the church. The ceremonial elevation occurred on September 22, 1985, with the Apostolic Nuncio, Most Reverend Bruno Torpigliano. And much later, the basilica was granted the privileges and title of a national shrine, stripping and overshadowing the title off the original Penafrancia Parish Church, just across the Naga River. During the fluvial procession of September 19, 1987, the image of the Virgin of Penafrancia fell on the river by the embarkation point at Tabacu. The image was recovered, but the gold crown was lost on the murky waters of Naga River. The fluvial procession was briefly interrupted but continued with the image without the crown. During the 1996 Traslacion procession, the manto of the Virgin of Penafrancia was grabbed off by rowdy participants of the procession. In the year of 1999, during the 75th Jubilee anniversary of the coronation of Our Lady of Penafrancia, the Confraternity of St. Joseph was organized for the formation of voyadars to ensure the solemnity of the Traslacion and fluvial procession. On August 2008, the area around Tabacu embarkation and landing site underwent a dredging operation in preparation for the coming fluvial. The crew not only cleaned up and dredged the river, but also recovered the lost crown of the image of the Virgin of Penafrancia. Subsequently, the crown was verified by church authorities and authenticated as the original crown that fell on the river when the image went overboard 21 years ago. In 2012, the event was recalled in retrospect during the festivities. The recovered crown is now permanently on display at the Penafrancia Basilica Museum. During the Tercentenary Jubilee Penafrancia celebrations in the year of 2010, changes were introduced, like a new and formidable fabricated undas for the images came into service. It also highlighted spiritual formation of the voyadores and reorganization of the Cofradia de San Jose and Guardias de Maria, creation of the Joint Organizing Committee, in partnership with the local government of Naga, and other pertinent government agencies, for the peaceful and orderly conduct of fiesta celebrations. After the tercentenary celebration of the Penafrancia in September 2010, the singing of original Spanish hymn of Reswini Vibrante was revived, instead of the Bicol translation. On September 9, 2016, the Archdiocese of Caceres unveiled the Portamari, a commemorative arch of the tercentenary or 300th celebration of the devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary in the year of 2010, in front of the Metropolitan Cathedral. The grand portal measures at 18 meters wide, 4 meters deep and 11 meters high, has on its top the 10 feet tall brass image of the Lady of Penafrancia, and 2 angels on each side. The main portal's center accommodates at least 8 persons, while the 2 small gates can accommodate 3 persons. All images used in the festivities and religious activities are replicas of the original, which are safely kept at the Basilica Museum, meaning, the images displayed in the altars of the old Penafrancia Shrine in Penafrancia Basilica are simply the replicas of the ones safely kept at the museum. Postscript on Mila Obias. We visited on October 3, 2023, one of Mila's brother Renato, in their residence in Del Carmen, the same location of Mila's former family house, which by now, a new concrete residential structure occupies.
Ako si Renato Obias, kapatid ni Mila Obias. Ako ang panlima sa magkakapatid. Si Mila, Manuel, Emerita, Raul, Renato, Elbert, Maricor Ubias.
In the living room, a large image of Mila is conspicuously displayed. According to Renato, the colored charcoal drawing portrayed differently Mila's appearance, who had a long flowing hair.
Panahon 1972, ako po ay nasa ikatlong baitang ng elementarya. Wala po kong alam na may nangyari sa kapatid ko. Nalaman lang namin sa binarita sa radyo, saka yung mga pinsan namin. Nang malaman pong namatay ang aking kapatid, pinuntahan po ng tatay at nanay ko kung saan nakadilala yung mga patay. Marami ang mga patay.
So your parents recovered your sister's remains.
Yun, nakuha po, pigkakan. Natatugan ka ng mga natambakan ng mga patay, marami na patay nun.
Where was she recovered?
Hindi ko naarap kung saan dinala yung mga patay.
Where was her body found?
Na ano po?
By the street.
Kung saan hindi ko po matanda kung saan napigdarara si mga gadaan.
Hospital. Or DZRB compound.
Hindi ko na po hindi ko na matandaan. Sa pinunta ng nanay ko at tatay ko.
Okay.
Nakuha po ng tatay ko at nanay ko ang labi ng aking kapatid na si Mila Ubias. Dinala dito sa bayan namin sa Del Carmen, Calabang, Camarines. Maliit pa ako noon, pero po ang pagkaalam ko, nagbayad po ang city government ng Naga ang pagkaalam ko po, kung hindi ako nagkakamali, 50,000 para kay Ate Mila lang.
He confided that the family received a compensation of 50,000 pesos from the city government of Naga.
Hindi ko lang alam yun sa iba kung magkano. Hindi ko rin alam kung kaya natanggap yung 50,000 ang galing sa city government ng Naga.
But he has no idea on how much others have received. But he has no clear memory or knowledge when the compensation was awarded or received by his parents.
Nilibing siya sa Calabanga Catholic Cemetery. Nung mamatay ang nanay ko noong December 2022, ang misyon ng aming mga kapatid, ilipat na doon sa, nilibing yun sa Falcon Memorial Park. Tapos, plano sanang ilipat doon ng mga restos ng aking tatay at ayun kapatid ko Ate Mila.
As Mila's birthday nears on May 14, 2023, the Ubias brothers had her crypt cleaned. They had the clear intention of transferring her remains to the family's appointed burial spots at the Falcon Memorial Park, where eldest brother Manolo was buried. With the demise on December of 2022 of their mother Emerita, the remains of their father was also transferred to the Memorial Park from the Calabanga Catholic Cemetery in San Isidro.
Kaya lang, bunutin namin yung binunot yung yung kabaong.
Buo pa yung kabaong?
Buo pa. Ito ba ito ang, niya, buhok, nakadukot pa ang dugo niya.
The brothers opened the tomb of Mila and found out the casket was still whole, despite the 51 years that have passed. The brothers opened Mila's casket and to their surprise, they found the remains of Mila still whole and intact.
Kaya ang nangyari, sabi ng pinsan namin na pare, huwag na muna, ibalik na muna. Kaya ngayon nakabinalik niya sa tatay ko, kilala na doon. Buo pa ang tears.
They referred the matter to a priest and also their relative that advised to leave Mila in her current burial place, and advised they followed. Retrospect on former DJ Gladinor. In our visit of former DJ Gladinor in her residence in Legazpi City on October 6, 2023, she showed us her vast indoor and outdoor plants in full bloom. Her house has an appointed front row seat view of the almost perfect cone of majestic Mount Mahune. In 1976, she got married to Larry. The couple's firstborn arrived in 1977. The family transferred to Legazpi City in 1979, with the promotion of Larry as radio station branch manager. The move prompted Nora at seeking a teaching career at the St. Agnes Academy, after her Colegio de Santa Isabel teaching stint in Naga City. Later, Nora attained a doctorate in education, and a few years back, she retired from the Bicol University. Despite her retirement, her love for mentoring brought her at accepting a teaching load at the Mariners Polytechnic College's foundation in the city. She is still active into mentoring and advising hopeful masteral and doctoral students. Now done playing a doting mother for one son and two daughters, she still finds joy in personally tutoring grandsons from her firstborn son.
Ang bansa ay nagsak ng teritoryo. Number 3. Ang bansa ay mayroong pinansa sa ibaan ng pamahalaan. Number 4.
She also delights from visits of her other 3 grandkids, one boy and a girl from daughter living in Legazpi, and one girl from daughter residing in Quezon City, Metro Manila. Reflecting on that fateful day of September 16, 1972, the change in remote broadcast coverage location assignment may have saved their lives. She considers the turn of events in the Penafrancia Fluvial Colgante bridge tragedy as a positive turning point in her life, and the blessings in her family they now enjoy as a shower of miracles from above. You have just watched the full edition of a Red Monkey Talks show, featuring the Penafrancia Fluvial Colgante bridge disaster of September 16, 1972 and related trivia. A joint project of the Red Monkey Talks and Zabunga 360 inMotion channels. Previously, the original text was published online in zabunga360.net. This edition is a revised long-form narrative with additional, comprehensive and updated information. Script by Jap Adupi, direction and technical supervision by Danton Pascual. Thank you for listening and watching this initial outing of the Red Monkey Talks show. Please subscribe, leave a comment, like this post, and hit the notification bell. When you like and share our content, you help increase the visibility and distribution of our posts. Your support will also contribute in a huge way to the awareness for others who could learn a thing or two from our content. Imagine if we can freely check out the pun and pension news, information, and culture you need to know. Join us here at the Red Monkey Talks show and be a rebel simply by listening, watching, and supporting us. Subscribe to our channel, like our content, leave a comment, and ring the notification bell to get timely updates. Have a great day everyone. Again, thank you.